around 250 kilometers of fences, an estimated 2 million landmines, and thousands of soldiers on both sides. This is a Korean demilitarized zone, despite its name, one of the most heavily militarized borders in the world. This area forms part of the defensive line, protecting Seoul in the event of escalation. Just beyond this point, less than a kilometer away, lies North Korea, close enough to imagine connection, yet still out of reach. Korea's division began in 1945, following the end of Japanese colonial rule and World War II. The peninsula was split between Soviet and American spheres of influence in what was intended to be a temporary arrangement. 5 years later, war erupted, quickly expanding beyond Korea as Chinese forces and the United Nations coalition of 16 countries entered the conflict. For 3 devastating years, the war tore through cities, villages, and families, leaving millions dead or displaced.
I was 18 years old when the Korean War broke out. Because my hometown was located near the 38th parallel, North Korean forces arrived there on the very first day of the war. We could not resist much, and while evacuating, we ended up becoming occupied.
I first took part in the Battle of Daegwallyeong. After that, we advanced north through Odesan, only to retreat again as the front line shifted back and forth. During the war, there were 2 occasions when I came close to losing my life.
The war brought immense hardship and suffering, but it also strengthened our country and shaped the path of its development.
After 3 years of devastating fighting involving South and North Korea, United Nations forces and Chinese troops, an armistice was signed in 1953 by the United Nations Command, North Korea and China. The agreement halted the war, but not the conflict itself. No peace treaty was ever reached, leaving the Korean Peninsula divided and heavily militarized to this day.
At first, everyone was thinking this is going to be temporary, but unfortunately, this was not the case. They drew a line which was calculated very quickly in a short period of time, and this line became the fate of Korea, which is continuing until now.
We are in Seoul, the Republic of Korea, a country that for more than 70 years has lived in a shadow of unfinished war. The Korean Peninsula remained divided, the borders still closed, and families are separated not for years but for generations. In this documentary, we will explore why this long unresolved conflict still matters today, the risks it continues to pose, and what it will take to finally break the silence of war that never truly ended.
The frozen conflict with the armistice. But since the Korean War ended at the mid-1950s, we are still at the war condition, meaning that we didn't have any peaceful agreement between 2 countries.
Since 1953, dozens of attempts have been made to reduce tensions on the Korean Peninsula. The most significant included the 6-party talks involving the United States, China, Russia, Japan, and the 2 Koreas, as well as a series of inter-Korean summits. In 2019, US President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un held historic meetings, including the first ever encounter between sitting leaders of the 2 countries.
They were willing to denuke a large portion of the areas that we wanted, but we couldn't give up all of the sanctions for that. So we continue to work and we'll see, but we had to walk away from that particular suggestion. And one of the things, importantly, that Chairman Kim promised me last night is regardless, he's not going to do testing of rockets and nuclear.
The historic meeting in 2019 raised hopes for a new era of dialogue. Guard posts were dismantled, communication channels reopened, and cooperation projects resumed. But as negotiations over North Korea's nuclear program stalled, relations quickly deteriorated. In 2020, Pyongyang demolished the Inter-Korean liaison office in Kaesong, bringing much of the recent progress to an abrupt halt.
Of course, what denuclearization means is, to a certain extent, the disarmament of North Korea. Naturally, as I have always said, and I can reaffirm it once again, as the North Korean side itself also states, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea requires guarantees of its security and the preservation of its sovereignty.
Denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula is an unwavering commitment. The Republic of Korea is a country that joined the NPT regime, and as such, it is a country that fundamentally cannot possess nuclear weapons.
The U.S. has applied the most brutal and inhuman sanctions against the DPRK and posed persistent nuclear threat for over 7 decades by labeling it as the enemy, part of axis of evil, and a target of preemptive nuclear strike. If the U.S. persists in such hostile policy towards the DPRK, there will never be denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula.
Today, North Korea is estimated to possess around 50 nuclear warheads, with enough fissile material to potentially expand its arsenal ever further. According to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute and the International Atomic Energy Agency, Pyongyang continues to advance its nuclear and ballistic missile programs, keeping the Korean Peninsula at the center of global security concerns.
We have been able to confirm that there is a rapid increase in the operation of Yongbyon 5 megawatt reactor, also the operation of the reprocessing unit, the operation of the light water reactor, and the activation of other facilities apart from Yongbyon. All of them point to a very serious increase in the capabilities of DPRK in the area of nuclear weapons production, which is estimated at a few dozen warheads.
The president recognizes that North Korea has great potential, and he looks forward to a day when sanctions on the DPRK can begin to be removed. However, that cannot happen until the DPRK completely and verifiably eliminates its weapons of mass destruction programs.
At present, our armed forces are fully prepared to respond to any crisis, and our nation's nuclear deterrent is also strengthening its absolute capability, remaining faithful to self-defense.
More than 70 years after the Korean War, the peninsula remains divided. Why has lasting peace proven so difficult to achieve?
First, geopolitical reason. Second, there is the system differences. Third, economic size. First, as you may know, Korean Peninsula is situated between Russia, China, Japan, and United States. This peninsula can have an important role in the geopolitical between the big 4 countries. Until early 70s, even North Korea was almost equal economically to South Korea. But from the mid-70s, the gap between South and North became great. And now our GDP is 20 times bigger than North Korea.
Because of development of their nuclear capacity since mid of 1980s, there are serious sanctions against North Korea which prevent their possible development, and there is a serious scarcity in many resources, and also GDP growing, decreasing sufficiently. As for South Korea, it is one of the miracles of economic development. Korea applies artificial intelligence in the world on the first place. 10% of total works in Korea implemented by robots and artificial intelligence.
According to the World Bank, South Korea's economy reached approximately $1.9 trillion in 2024, while estimates by the Bank of Korea placed North Korea's economy at around $27 billion. More than 70 years after the war, South Korea's economy is over 60 times larger, while North Korea remains heavily dependent on trade with China and increasingly Russia.
We have to focus on the fundamental difference between South and North Korea, because the presence of South Korea itself is most serious threat to them. Why? With the same language, same history, we are living on the same peninsula. However, we are free, more prosperous, more open-minded.
This is not important that you have common history, language, religious background. Most important that how much common social area you have. Like Koreans in South Korea call themselves Hanguk Saram, while in North Korea they are not Hanguk Saram, they are Cheson Saram. Even Korean alphabet is very unique, but how they use it in North and in South it is different. Till the recent time, like 5-6 years ago, North and South Korea even has different time, like 15 minutes differences between their time definition.
Despite the fact that more than 70 years have passed since the Korean War, the factors that helped shape the conflict remain relevant today. Then as now, the Korean Peninsula has been influenced by interests extending far beyond its borders. As long as those wider strategic considerations endure, achieving lasting peace remains a complex challenge.
The Koreans are always quite sensitive about the pressure from outside, because fortunately or unfortunately, we are surrounded by 4 big neighboring countries. Presence of those 4 countries influence upon the decision-making process of our foreign policy. Their existence, their presence is a kind of default for us.
Together with Comrade General Secretary, I hope to use this visit as an opportunity to strengthen the top-level planning and strategic guidance for China-North Korea relations in the new era.
China still is a major ally and try to define a character of policy within North Korea, but even China not really satisfied what happened in North Korea, especially about their nuclear capacity, which can be treated not only for South Korea but also for China. Plus, Korea developed missiles which may launch even the United States. Like several years ago, they launched own national satellite to the orbit. That means they have intercontinental ballistic rockets which can also launch United States territory, which is also important, because for South Korea and North Korea, making nuclear war is meaningless because they will be affected strongly by radiations.
Since the 1970s, when Korea were developing very fast in the industrial development, we started to think about having our self-indigenous defense industry since then. South Korea now can build nuclear submarine with the collaboration with the US support and the cooperation. The Eastern Europe, who feels after the Russian-Ukraine war, now are seeking Korea as a good partner for the defense industries.
I'm greatly encouraged by Minister On's commitment to increase defense spending and to make greater investments in ROK military capabilities. This includes critical missile defense and space capabilities that our forces need to preserve the peace and prevail, God forbid, in war. For the first time in history, we agreed to demonstrate the ability to maintain and repair U.S. warships here in Korea, And doing this will harness this country's world-class shipbuilding capabilities.
We have an excellent technology like artificial intelligence, semiconductor, or MRO of shipbuilding. It is becoming a great asset for us, not only for the defense industry's export opportunity, but also there is a point with which we can show our own value as an ally to the United States.
Through strong deterrence based on the ROK-US military alliance, we will respond to North Korea's nuclear program and military provocations.
As the US and South Korea took every occasion to claim that the joint military exercises are defensive in nature and an essential element for combat readiness, and etc., then we are also compelled to develop, test, and deploy the powerful physical means essential for our national defense.
The Treaty on the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership between our two countries is a very constructive and forward-looking, peace-oriented and defensive treaty aimed at promoting and protecting the fundamental interests of the peoples of our two countries.
This is more and more a threat not only to the European part of NATO, but also to the United States, because Russia is delivering the latest technology into North Korea in return for North Korean help with the war against Ukraine.
Relations between Russia and North Korea reached a new level in 2024 with the signing of a comprehensive strategic partnership treaty. Since then, Pyongyang has provided support to Russia in connection with the war in Ukraine.
And one more result of this week. Our Special Operations Forces soldiers, specifically Tactical Group Number 84, together with airborne troops, captured 2 soldiers from North Korea. They are alive and have already been brought to Kyiv.
We believe that there are now at least 10,000 DPRK forces in the Kursk Oblast, recognizing that as we continue to assess DPRK presence on the ground, those numbers could go up slightly in terms of the total number of DPRK troops in Russia.
As long as North Korean leader has close relation with Russian president, I think that Kim Jong-un may not be very much excited about having a summit meeting, another third meeting with President Trump.
Бойцы Корейской народной армии плечом к плечу с российскими военнослужащими.
Russian-Ukraine war, which we think far from South Korean Peninsula issue, now is connected with North Korean participation in Russian army, meaning that now North Korean military can increase its capability in terms of technological, also operational experiences, and also financial and technical support from Russia to Pyongyang, which would escalate the tension in South Korea too. The long-term conflicts in Middle East, which would put US much military power in the Middle Eastern, could escalate the new escalation in East Asia by China, Taiwan crisis, and that would also involve North Korea and South Korea as well.
On one hand, the Korean people still have the hope of unification. But on the other hand, especially the youngsters, when current generation of the young boys and young girls, they are not so quite optimistic about the unification. And these things influence upon the foreign policy.
Even aimed strained relations, rare moments of contact still occur. In 2026, a North Korean women's football team traveled to South Korea for an international tournament, marking their first visit by a North Korean sports delegation in nearly 8 years.
Now young generation don't think that there will be a huge war in the Korean Peninsula, which makes some kind of relaxation in a sense that unification necessary. But we have to remember that in Korea, we do have a big portion of upper middle age and old age who have their separate families and relatives in North Korea who seeks unification very crucial.
Many separated families continue to live with deep sorrow in their hearts. The military demarcation line created after the Korean War became a massive barrier, preventing separated families from meeting their parents, siblings, and other loved ones.
Millions of Korean families were torn apart by war and division. Since South Korea began registering separated family members, around 134,000 people have applied in the hope of seeing their loved ones again. More than 100,000 have since passed away, leaving only about 34,000 survivors. Family reunions were held just 20 times. Today, aimed deteriorating inter-Korean relations, even those rare meetings have come to a halt.
When the Korean War broke out, my two brothers went into hiding to avoid forced conscription. But after being reported by local communist supporters, they were discovered by North Korean forces, dragged before a so-called people's trial, beaten, bound, and taken to the north. My parents witnessed the entire ordeal, while my mother followed them as far as she could before being forced to say goodbye. She never saw her sons again. For the rest of her life, she carried the pain of that separation, hoping that one day Korea would reunite and her children would return home.
With family reunions between North and South Korea currently suspended, South Korea has introduced alternative ways to preserve connections between separated families. Video messages are recorded in the hope that they may one day reach relatives across the border, while DNA samples are being collected and stored to help verify family ties in the future.
Right now, with official reunion programs remaining limited, some separated families arrange meetings through third countries such as China. In addition to face-to-face reunions, some families exchange letters or participate in other forms of contact. To ease the financial burden, the South Korean government provides support of up to 6 million won per person for reunions held in third countries.
After inter-Korean relations improved, I was finally able to visit Kaesong. My hometown was just beyond the embankment, so close that I knew exactly where it was. Yet I could neither see it nor visit it. We were allowed to travel only along designated routes under strict restrictions. Standing so close to home, yet unable to reach it, was more than disappointing. It was deeply frustrating.
Just an hour drives from Seoul, in the border city of Paju, a number of observation sites offer a rare glimpse into one of the world's most isolated countries. Reaching these locations, however, requires passing through a series of military checkpoints. Once inside, observation desks provide views of North Korean villages, farmland, and buildings across the demilitarized zone through binoculars. Beyond the viewing platforms, visitors encounter memorials, peace monuments, and messages left by separated families. These ribbons carry messages, names, memories, hopes. Tourists come here to see the border, but for the members of separated families, this place is deeply personal. They come to leave something behind and to feel, even for a moment, closer to those on the other side. Home to hundreds of thousands of residents, Paju City has learned to balance ordinary life with the realities of living next to North Korea. Modern neighborhoods, businesses, and tourist attractions exist alongside military checkpoints and security zones. Among them is Camp Greaves, a former US military base that once housed soldiers guarding the border and today stands as a reminder of the peninsula's unresolved division.
I
participated in separated family reunions several times, and among them, there is one case that has remained most vividly in my memory. A son had gone to North Korea when he was young, while his mother remained in the south. Years later, during a reunion event, they finally had the chance to meet again. The son was already in his 70s, while his mother was in her 90s and had begun suffering from dementia. When the reunion took place and the son approached her, the mother looked at him and asked, "Who are you?" The son stood beside her in tears. The boy who had left as a teenager had returned as an elderly man. Telling her that he was her son only left the mother confused and overwhelmed. That is why separated family reunions are a race against time.
While separated families remember loved ones they couldn't reunite with, veterans remember the battles they survived. As the generations that experience the war grow smaller, organizations across South Korea are working to preserve their stories and keep the memory of the conflict alive for future generations.
We are now an organization of the people who survived, people who participated in the Korean War. We estimate that 23,000 are still alive. The Seoul branch had 10,000 people under it, but over 7 years, 4,000 people passed away. During one of the final battles of the Korean War, I came face to face with a Chinese officer. We raised our weapons and fired at each other almost simultaneously. The bullet shattered my shoulder, broke 8 ribs, and stopped just short of my heart. Both of us fell, but I survived what could have been a fatal wound.
I witnessed many tragedies during the war. Among the scenes that stayed with me most was seeing a mother killed in an air raid, while the baby strapped to her back, untouched by the bombing, was left crying beside her. War is something that should never happen again.
Yet, beyond the headlines, military parades and nuclear tensions, lies a country of more than 26 million people. For decades, generations of North Koreans have built their lives, raised families, and looked toward the future in one of the world's most isolated states. Their voices are rarely heard beyond the country's borders, but they remain an essential part of the story of a peninsula that is still searching for peace.
No matter how expensive peace may be, it is better than war. It is better to win without fighting than to win by fighting. And a peace in which there is no need to fight is the most certain form of security.
Because without the help of the 4 neighboring countries, it's not easy to fulfill the unification, and it's not easy to make it realized. But at the same time, it should be driven for ourselves, not by them.
In our lifetime, even during our sons' lifetimes, I do not think North and South can unite.
More than 70 years after the war, many young South Koreans have never experienced direct military confrontation. For a growing number of people, reunification is no longer seen as an inevitable goal, but as a distant political question. Polls show a widening gap between older generations who still remember separation and younger Koreans who have grown up in 2 very different realities.
I believe coexistence between the 2 Koreas will continue. At the same time, lasting peace on the Korean Peninsula remains a goal that must one day be achieved. Whether that will be possible, however, remains a very difficult question.
2 broad scenarios dominate discussions about the future of the peninsula: continued coexistence under deterrence, or renewed confrontation fueled by military escalation and geopolitical rivalry. For now, none appears imminent. Yet, all remain possible. Two political systems, two fundamentally different economies, and competing approaches by global powers to manage the conflict. From our investigation, it's clear that in South Korea coexistence is seen as the only viable path forward. The situation on the other side remains uncertain, something we really hope to explore in one of our future episodes. One thing is evident: the absence of peace has real consequences. It creates the potential for escalation, with an outcomes that could be catastrophic not only for the region, but far beyond it.